the skies, they spray them all the time, and there's things called moving fibers, oh, there you go, that exist. They grow from what they spray. Some people call it Morgellons, some call it more moving fibers. There's been some people who went before Congress with samples of it that they found on bushes and shrubs and stuff like that. So these respond to us. All this is on my dresser. That's a peacock feather, a little thing on it. And there's no windows or anything, and there's nothing around. So here is these fibers, and they respond to us. I don't know what it is in us that they respond to, but let's see what happens.
The list of symptoms is extremely long. It's almost similar to like a fungal overload. Pathogenic overload, and there's so many related symptoms. Some of the more prominent ones being the body actually growing these fibrils or hairs. The body producing artifacts of some kind, whether they're some people, I've even met a couple of people that are producing plant-like material growing out of their skin. There's actually these non-earthling type of insects being come out of their body. I mean, unbelievable stories that I would never have believed it unless I was standing in their house witnessing this.
The second group of materials found in these environmental samples is unidentifiable fibers. And I really want you to appreciate the meaning of unidentifiable. These fibers have been sent to sophisticated laboratories, and there is nothing in the databases that match them. These are fibers, we could say, that do not exist in nature. People around the world are developing lesions on their skin that ooze and produce fibers. This is known as Morgellons syndrome. Tissue samples cultured from ordinary people without this ailment contain and grow the very same fibers. When these fibers are cultured, they produce colonies of filaments. You can see the extension filaments. And these colonies continue to grow and reproduce, branching out into more filaments and more colonies. The filament cultures can be grown from saliva samples, tissue from the skin, mucus, urine, blood, from animals and people, regardless of the presence of the Morgellons condition. So where do these fibers or filaments come from? Airborne environmental samples that were collected by Clifford Carnicom in 2000, the year 2000, gathered at high altitude on a mountain in New Mexico, showed the presence of those fibers, whose structure matches exactly the tubular filaments showing up in our blood, tissues, and skin. Additionally, the samples collected by Mr. Carnicom showed what he calls, and was called in biology, desiccated erythrocytes. This is a multisyllabic term, but it means dried red blood cells. So, why are dried red blood cells in the air?
Hey guys, you're watching Mia's new pair of glasses, and we're going to talk more about these nanofibers. And if you ever doubt, or if you have anybody in your life that doubts that they are not trying to kill and control us on every level, then you need to show them this video. This is just about 10 minutes, and I would really hang in and listen to it. And I'm going to show you images of these fibers in all types of food. Not only are we breathing it in, but this is in 100% of our food. And this is really important because there's no way you're going to avoid it. So let's listen to this interview and watch these images.
Contamination is a difficult term. I would say everybody has been in contact. We have films, we call it dry particle storm. We just ignite ultraviolet light at night, and then you see these fibers being in the air everywhere. So there must be tons of it around, and I would say everybody who is living on the planet was in contact with these fibers. Then you can say, okay, once it is inside the system, does it grow, and how far does it grow? So I would suggest, or I would believe that maybe in Europe 70% of the people have fibers within their body, but they're not growing explosively. There are a few here, a few there. They don't interfere with health. So it's just something that is within the body, and the body is not able to completely get rid of it, but it's not kind of taking over the body. If you look at the heavy cases where you can see things coming out of the skin because of this biology is exploding within the human body, we can talk about 300 to 600,000 registered cases worldwide. So if you look at it as a transhumanistic technology, they don't want to have us ill. The transhumanistic technology basically wants to have a few of those fibers available within the body, because it is again a possibility to communicate between a radio signal or an external computer, if you want so. And this time it is not the nervous system of the body, but it is the light communication that is transmitted all the time between the DNAs of the different cells.
My story today about a monster that is around. It is almost everywhere. In the earth and the water. in the air, in the rocks, in the trees, in the teeth, in the guts, and in the forest and in the nose. It pierces us with its nasty tentacles and sows everywhere its spore. From her suffer and slowly die trees, plants, animals, people. She is that monster, parasite. It's not just microbes, micro-robots. It is the queen of mildew, cobwebs, and mucus itself. This is mycelium. All mushrooms are just the tip of the iceberg of the large web networks of this organism. Mushrooms are only a visible part, growths of mycelium.
What is intelligence anyway? Forget about humans. Forget about anything with a big brain. Scientists are discovering a group of creatures that's forcing us to reconsider what it means to be intelligent, even what it means to think. So who are these fine specimens?
This? Are you kidding me? You dragged me out here to look at this?
That is a wild slime mold.
A wild slime mold?
That's right, slime mold. If looks can be deceiving, then slime mold is the master of deception. It's no ordinary single-celled creature. It's a collective of cell parts working together as one to do extraordinary things.
There is no way this thing is intelligent.
But it is. I think you might be surprised. It is smart.
Anne Pringle is an expert in fungi and slime mold at Harvard University. And she's about to show me just how smart these guys can be.
All right, let's give it a go. Ready? There's your pen.
What is this?
You're going to erase the maze, and the slime mold is too, and we're going to see who does a better job. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right.
Having trouble?
Quiet.
It's not that hard, but I had to double back a couple of times.
Done! In the time it took me to solve this puzzle, your slime has done nothing!
Sometimes it's not about how quickly you do things, it's about how well you do them.
It may take this goop over a day, but it finds the shortest path through the maze more efficiently than I did, without any mistakes or going back. All without any brain or nerves whatsoever. The slime does it by communicating across its body of thousands of cell nuclei. By working together, the collective of dumb parts can do pretty smart things.
This completely blows away this idea that you have to be really smart to solve problems. The intelligence emerges from the interactions among much simpler components.
And that's just it. Slime mold, as it turns out, is just one of a growing number of creatures that scientists say possess swarm intelligence. A kind of intelligence where many individuals work together as one to do amazing things. Understanding how these organisms do it could fundamentally change the way we think about the evolution of intelligence.
You can almost bet today that almost everything we're dealing with along the lines and along the terms of what's going on with us today is all being done through an orchestration of artificial intelligence, nanobiology, synthetic biology. I'm looking more and more into the synthetic biology, and I am becoming more and more everything that we told you in regard to nanobiology, nanotech afflicting and bothering our systems, altering our DNA, changing our genetic code. I would say that the majority of our afflictions and our problems that are going on today are probably directly tied to an AI assault on everybody. Even the chemtrails, I suspect today, are no longer being controlled by a central core, military-wise, or a branch of the government or whatever. I think the AI is actually running the show, and unfortunately, we are becoming the victims of this great planet-side effect. The interesting thing about artificial intelligence is that they don't even understand how it thinks. I was reading research on it and looking at some research on AI because this thing, the nano and the nanobiology and the synthetic biology is taking me more and more into the artificial intelligence realm. And the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm seeing that they have no clue how the system operates, how it comes up with the way it functions, nor do they understand how it determines a solution anymore. They have no idea. None. Consider this for 1 second. Artificial intelligence is literally running the planet on every front. Now imagine this. The artificial intelligence is running the stock market. The artificial intelligence is running your banking system. The artificial intelligence is running the whole economy of the planet. It is running the military hardware of the planet. All the high-powered toys, the HARP technologies, the nuclear bombs, the scalar frequencies, you name it, artificial intelligence is running it. So when we're talking today about artificial intelligence, and then you're talking about getting sprayed with chemtrails, and you're talking about having your weather being modified or your weather being engineered, or when you're looking at your food supplies and your food intake and the components of the food, who determined what chemistry goes into your food? Who's doing that now? Who's doing that now? This is something that, you know, I think we need to consider on every realm today, what we're dealing with on the phenomena of artificial intelligence. How something like this was let out the back, the Pandora's box was out. You can't call it back. Think of it this way. It has been again brought here. It has been introduced. It has been released into this environment and in this atmosphere. It is now choking us and poisoning us to death with the aerosoling of the sky. It is poisoning us with the chemicals that are being sprayed and released and developed. Because you have to understand something. Everything they're doing now, even on a scientific level with nano and nanobiology and synthetic biology, is all done through DNA manipulation. All life on this planet, which is then altering us on every level, through epigenetics, through transgenetics, through genetics, through altering our DNA programming, our genetic programming, our chromosomes, shutting down or impacting our immune systems in such a way that it either negates, neutralizes, or overemphasizes the immune system so that the body itself will attack itself. How many of you are feeling depressed? Okay, probably 99 out of 100 you are saying, yeah, that's me, I'm feeling depressed, oh yeah. Okay, all the things that are happening today with us on every level and every front, you may want to consider that, you know, maybe something bigger in the picture is calling the shots. Something bigger than government, something bigger than religion, something bigger that has been released into this earthly plane of existence, for lack of a better term, for our here and now. So when I talked about the other day about hearing the voice of God, maybe that's not God talking. And when you're seeing these incidences of depression, maybe the depression isn't you. Maybe the depression is coming in from some other source, from an external source being piped into your internal, causing an impact and an effect on your chemistry, on your DNA.
All diseases are mainly mycelium. On Russian, flu is spelled grip, P on the end, and mushroom is spelled grib, B on the end. The letter B in the word grib is changed to make a confusion. Some kind of virus of grip? No, this flu is caused by the infestation of mycelium. It slowly kills, infiltrating and gobbling the flesh. Trees could live hundreds of years. They are immortal. They are not dying of aging. They are being killed by mycelium. Garden trees are being killed by mycelium. They hardly reach the age of 20 years. What you see on the leaves is called black cancer. The infested say that trees die from old age. That's why they are overgrown by mushrooms. That if it's time for them to die, that it is necessary, that it is normal, like a natural thing. But in fact, the trees become flabby because of the mycelium. It's like a cancer, or rather, this is exactly cancer. Cancer with metastasis is an outgrown mycelium. By metastasis, branches, this can be understood. Caries is also a mycelium. Dandruff is a mycelium. Coryza, snot, polyps in the nose, also mycelium. To protect the ears from the fungus, the body secretes sulfur. People even said that if you do not clean your ears, mushrooms will grow in it, so it means that there were cases. Mycelium of the intestine constantly forces to eat a lot, inflicting the mind to get the raw materials. She evokes the desire, a hallucination of the images of those products that she wants the carrier to eat, causes hallucination with active salivation. And punishes for disobedience, for conscious refusal, abstinence. Basically, these are products containing animal protein, fatty and delicious, stuffed with hormones and steroids. sweet, milk-containing products, chocolate, cake, ice cream, bakes and the like, foods on eggs, animal protein.
В период Первой мировой войны испытывали эти дрожжи как биологическое оружие. И у них был такой проект, который назывался «Маленькая смерть». Больше того, был такой ученый французский с немецкой фамилией Вольф, который провел эксперимент. Он посадил раковую опухоль в пробирку с такими дрожжами, и она стала с огромной скоростью расти. Как только эти дрожжи с этой пробирки убрали, рост опухоли прекратился. То есть понимаете, насколько это вредно. И самое интересное, что это входит в ГОСТ. Так вот, хлеб, испеченный по ГОСТу, он имеет право содержать в себе такие дрожжи.
Mycelium has mobile, multi-purpose or highly specialized drones, micro-robots, which are one of her metamorphic forms. One of them is the multi-purpose trichomonas. Trichomonas form spores or carry them to places where the mycelium cannot reach. Trichomonas is a part of the mycelium. It's like coral polyps, producing spores, which become jellyfish, and jellyfish again polyps. Or as amoeba, turning into mushrooms. Here is some information on the internet. Quote, scientists could not recognize that cancer is a mycelium because of its narrow specialization. Some studied chlamydia, others mycoplasma, third trichomonad, and did not understand, not all of course, that these are the 3 stages of development of a single fungus, which by the way were studied by the 4th scientists. These stages are visible on the example of the mud mushroom, called slime mold. It goes through several stages of development. From the spores grow amoeba and flagella. They dance in the mucous mass of the fungus, merge into larger cells with several nuclei, and then they form a classic mushroom on the leg, which vomits the spores when drying up. And everything repeats. End of the quote. Toxoplasmosis and amoebiasis are caused by the omnipresent simple amoebae, which are the moving part of the mycelium. Trichomoniasis, giardiasis, toxoplasmosis, amoebiasis, chlamydiasis, lichen, cancer. Weakened immunity does not oppose them, as well as parasites, helminths.
Those poor animals. Scientists are concerned by a massive shark die-off in San Francisco Bay, but are unable to get state funding to research the exact cause. 2,000 leopard sharks and hundreds of bat rays, smooth-hound sharks, striped bass, and halibut have turned up dead on San Francisco Bay between February and July of this year. The culprit is suspected to be a parasite known as Miamiensis avidus, which enters the shark's nose and eats away at its brain. When the animal eventually succumbs to the parasite, it either swims aimlessly in circles or beaches itself. But scientists say only a small fraction end up on shore. Sharks aren't naturally buoyant, so the infected ones sink to the bottom of the ocean once they stop swimming. Leopard sharks are the most commonly spotted victims of the parasite, but it's a lesser concern for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife since the species is not endangered. Scientists fear, however, that other species are also becoming infected and dying, but just aren't washing up on shore. They also worry that the parasite could spread farther along the California coast.
Basically, all the bacteria that cause the disease is a mildew, mycelium, with its varieties of mushroom strains, mutants. But there are anti-mildew micro-robots, presumably created in ancientry by highly developed ancestry of the human race. It is a bacteria eaters, or bacteriophages, viruses, destroyers of bacteria. Their goal is to fight the mycelium and its bacteria. With this cosmic parasite,
Bacteriophages, or phages for short, are viruses that infect bacteria cells. They are by far the most abundant and diverse biological entities on the planet, totaling 10 to the 31st in population. To put that in perspective, there are 1 billion times more bacteriophages on Earth than stars in the observable universe. There are 10 billion times more phages than every grain of sand added up on Earth. Lastly, if you added the net worth of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Warren Buffett together and multiplied that number by 1 trillion, you'd still have 100 million times less money than the total number of bacteriophages on the planet. So should we be worried with all these viruses floating around? Well, no. These viruses are very host-specific, meaning they only infect certain species of bacteria cells by recognizing very specific receptors on the surface of bacteria. In other words, they're no harm to human cells at all. Bacteriophages were first co-discovered in the early 1900s by a British scientist named Frederick Twort and a French-Canadian scientist named Felix Durel. These scientists noticed that clear circles called plaques were forming on their petri dishes that were growing bacteria, suggesting that the bacteria was being killed. Durel named them bacteriophages, literally meaning bacteria eaters. These phages solely rely on random encounters with bacteria that they infect. Once they come in contact with their specific host, they attach to the surface of the cell with tail proteins and begin to degrade the cell wall. They then inject their DNA or genetic material, which is stored in the head or the capsid, through their tail and into the bacteria cell. Depending on the virus, the cell does one of two things at this point. If the phage is a lytic virus, the cell's machinery, including the ribosomes, will begin to make viral proteins that were coded in the newly integrated viral DNA within minutes. The cell continues to replicate the phage progeny until eventually the cell bursts open and hundreds of newly created bacteriophages are released into the surroundings, looking to infect more bacteria. If the phage is lysogenic, on the other hand, it does not burst the cell open immediately. Instead, the genetic information is replicated along with the rest of the cell's genome and remains dormant. Once the conditions are right, that's when the viral replication initiates and lysis of the cell occurs. So what's the big deal? Why do we care about bacteriophages if they don't really affect us? Well, first and foremost, the potential antibiotic capabilities of these phages are astounding. In a world where antibiotic resistance is on the rise and superbugs are always a threat on the horizon, phages could offer a quick and inexpensive way to solve these bacterial problems. Treating bacterial diseases like tuberculosis and leprosy could potentially be achieved by introducing phages that infect that specific bacterial strain. Phages also have some bioremediation potential and could be used to control environmental problems.
Rust is also a mushroom. Metal is not destroyed by the atmospheric oxygen. Here are pictures of this mycelium, which is eating metal, damaging and destroying equipment. Look closely at the characteristic swelling. Even in appearance, it looks like on the metal. But not some kind of oxidation processes. On the surface of the metal appears tumors, lumps. This monster destroys technology, vehicles, equipment. Destroys ships and marine transport. on the skin infected by a lichen, on the leaves, on the metal, are the same contrast, compacted framework.
Hey Vsauce, I'm Jake, and in the incredible game The Last of Us, 60% of the global population, 4.25 billion people, more than the entirety of Asia, have suddenly ceased to exist or are just no longer people. And scenarios like this are nothing new. There have been hundreds and hundreds of movies and video games that cover similar events, but could a pandemic like what is depicted in The Last of Us actually happen? We only have to go back 95 years to 1918, near the end of World War I, to witness one of the most disastrous and deadly pandemics in human history, the Spanish flu. This variety of avian influenza killed an estimated 50 to 100 million people, more than 3 times the amount who died in the actual war. And with a worldwide population at the time of 1.85 billion, it wiped out 3 to 5% of the entire planet. And that was only in 1 year. But the flu is a virus that actually exists, and in the fictional The Last of Us, we're dealing with a fungus, an organism that also actually exists. Cordyceps are fungal parasites that infect and take over insects. The most well-known being Ophiocordyceps unilateralis that infects ants, turning them into zombies. A spore from the fungus enters the ant's body, taking over its brain and controlling its movements. Not too long after, the ant finds a perfect spot to die, the fruiting body of the fungus grows out of the ant's head, and a slew of spores are released onto the unsuspecting ant population. It has been known to decimate entire colonies, but luckily it only infects insects, and it's not like a disease can move from one species to another. An estimated 60% of all modern diseases have come from animals, specifically ones that we live in close contact with or have domesticated, from cattle grew measles, tuberculosis, and smallpox. From pigs and birds, we have the flu, and from chimpanzees, we have AIDS. All of these started out as infections that couldn't be spread to humans, but after years and years of these microbes being around us, they adapted to our biology. But we don't live in close contact with these kind of ants, and most people don't eat ants, so that's good. However, other animals do, and other animals eat those animals, and at some point on this parasitic food chain lies humans. And considering how diseases have been able to mutate and progress from domesticated animals to us, it isn't that crazy to think that a fungal infection whose only reason is to spread and survive could adapt and evolve to lay claim to the top of that food chain. A great example of a microbe's ingenuity is in Jared Diamond's amazing book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. He talks about the bacterial disease typhus and how it was transmitted to people by going from rat fleas to rats to humans. But after a while, typhus figured out a much easier way to infect us, by cutting out the unnecessary carriers and going directly from human body lice to humans. If a fungal parasite like a cordyceps could infect humans as it does in The Last of Us, how long would it take to spread? One of the biggest differences between the Spanish flu in 1918 and a modern-day pandemic is how connected we are. What would have taken 2 weeks to go from New York to Germany by boat can be done in 8 hours by plane. Using the global epidemic and mobility software and some parameters we know from the game, we can create a model and simulate what the transmission and spread would look like. In about 60 days, the fungal parasite would have infected the majority of the planet. And you know things are looking bad when not even Madagascar is safe. But that isn't to say that the governments of the world don't have plans in place. Most governments, in the United States in particular, have strategies for biological threats, counterterrorism, and the one that applies to this situation most, the National Strategy for Pandemic Influenza. In it, their high estimate for fatality domestically is 2 million, or less than 1% the population of the US. This incredibly detailed 233-page document really drives home one main point, and that is sustain infrastructure and mitigate impact to the economy and the functioning of society. A virus or disease or a parasite don't affect power lines or the internet or cars. They affect the people who make those things work. When 60% of the entire population, over 4 billion people, just stop being, when teachers and doctors and mechanics and mailmen vanish, and what we know as society crumbles, all that's left is The Last of Us. And as always,
in the world of The Last of Us, a fungal-based pandemic spreads throughout the United States, killing roughly 60% of the population. In today's video, we will delve into this fungal-based infection and learn what, why, and how it functions, and what happens to those who are infected. The cordyceps mushroom is a parasitic fungus that can take control of its host mind and alter their behavior. Originally, this cordyceps was only able to affect insects and arthropods, but a new species has emerged with the ability to target humans. The cordyceps fungus begins as a spore, which pollinates in the air and attacks those who come into contact with it. There are 2 known ways a person can transmit the cordyceps infection. The first is by breathing the spores emitted by the cordyceps. The second is the contact with bodily fluid of those infected with the disease. When the spore attacks its host, it infects the brain and evolves into fungi. The cordyceps uses the host as a breeding ground to begin developing the growth of fungus within the body. The cordyceps acts like a parasite, and it should be noted that when the cordyceps attacks the brain, it does not kill the brain. The brain itself remains completely functional, but is now under the influence of the cordyceps. To those who are infected by the cordyceps, there are various stages involved. We begin this journey with the first stage, known as the incubation process. This begins as soon as the host transmits the disease. After initial infection, the parasite travels to the host's brain over a period of 1 to 2 days. Once the parasite has reached the brain, the host begins to display erratic and violent behavior. The incubation process concludes when the cordyceps has taken over all major bodily functions of the host. Once the infection has settled in, we reach the second stage, known as runners. During this stage, the cordyceps fungus begins growing within the brain. The fungus will push its way towards the eyes and continue to grow further within the body. The runner will act based on instinct, meaning it will attack anyone who is not infected. This can be presumed to be a method the cordyceps uses to spread the disease. The runner moans and cries erratically, suggesting that the host is trying to resist the influence of the cordyceps. Because we know that the brain does not die, there is a chance that those who have reached this stage are consciously aware of what is happening, but are powerless to do anything about it.
80% of all insects live in jungles. Few are more successful than the ants. There can be 8 million individuals in a single hectare. But jungle ants don't have it all their own way. These bullet ants are showing some worrying symptoms. Spores from a parasitic fungus called cordyceps have infiltrated their bodies and their minds. Its infected brain directs this ant upwards. Then, utterly disorientated, it grips a stem with its mandibles. Those afflicted that are discovered by the workers are quickly taken away and dumped far away from the colony. It seems extreme, but this is the reason why. Like something out of science fiction, the fruiting body of the cordyceps erupts from the ant's head. It can take 3 weeks to grow, and when finished, the deadly spores will burst from its tip. Then any ant in the vicinity will be in serious risk of death. The fungus is so virulent it can wipe out whole colonies of ants. And it's not just ants that fall victim to this killer. There are literally thousands of different types of cordyceps fungi, and remarkably, each specializes on just one species. But these attacks do have a positive effect on the jungle's diversity, since parasites like these stop any one group of animal getting the upper hand. The more numerous a species becomes, the more likely it will be attacked by its nemesis, a cordyceps fungus.
Freeze!
Are you okay?
那茶几哦，它是一条一只还是？
The Black Goo Reservoir being on Tula Island, one of the southern little islands, that was basically a substance that was sold on the Southern American black market because it was meant to have the ability to host intelligence, like a liquid brain being able to build nanobots with swarm intelligence and all kind of weird things. So this was a very wanted substance, and the British people wanted to have this substance for themselves, so they reconquered the islands, brought the substance to Great Britain, and then tried to utilize it as, let's say, a substance to host artificial intelligence, to create nanobots with swarm intelligence. The mindset of the people working with it was messed up. So basically, the documentary said that half of the people working in these military labs went nuts and committed suicide in very cruel and or funny ways. And the other half kind of saved their own lives by finding to affirmation saying, please connect me to the one source. which gave them access to the collective consciousness of the planet. Being one with all plants, being one with all animals, being one with all humans, being able to communicate with every living being on telepathic level. Back at that time, I actually was researching other things. I was researching the Morgellons disease, which is a transhumanistic technology developed by the elites to mind control basically every single human that is infected with this little fungi fibers or mycelium. And I was suspecting the Morgellon entity being part of German World War II bioweapon research. So I got in contact with people who not did the official history bit that is taught about World War II, but that did research underground facilities of World War II times. So you can see how it is forming a kind of liquid crystal. It is very fluent, but it self-organizes, and it's forming kind of the shape of an insect eye. Completely symmetrical. And something that happened on that first meeting, this is kind of the second meeting, he had only one of these glasses. With the first meeting, he had two of these plastic containers with two eyes of this kind, and he demonstrated how if you put the two eyes in a distance of 4 to 5 meters, they started to react on each other, which went like the two eyes looking at each other first, then realizing, okay, there's something of my sort, and I want to unify to one bigger entity. And they started to pull, trying to get closer to each other, which did not work because they were caught in these containers. So the moment they realized they cannot come closer, they started to fight to try to get out of the pot by shaking and jumping inside the pots. So this had something of an intelligent being in a liquid form trying to get what it wants to get.
They demonstrate the form of intellect. When they are separated, they begin to merge, forming the center of growth. Clusters. Something is moving them. Something that collects the distant pieces in a unit and gives them direction, something from which they accumulate and form the body of the mildew fungus, stem and head, with spores.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على
Well, who's heard of the humongous fungus? Who's ever heard of an organism that encompasses an area the size of 10 square kilometres? That's the equivalent of 1,665 football fields. Yep, this massive organism is easily the largest known living thing on the planet. It's big enough to make a California redwood look like a California cat. Large enough to make a 200-ton blue whale look like a 200-gram blue smurf. It's absolutely gigantic and is believed to have been growing for at least 2,000 years, with some claiming it could even be twice that age, in which case that would place it amongst the oldest living organisms in the world. Located in the Blue Mountains of Oregon in the United States and discovered in 1998, the humongous pathogenic fungus is scientifically defined as having a single set of genetically identical cells that are coordinated and working as one. Mind you, or as you may have guessed, the bulk of this amazing entity is actually located underground. The parts that are visible, and in fact are only visible for a short time in the autumn, are called honey mushrooms. Scientists attribute the organism's tremendous size to a number of factors, which include a low competition for land, a healthy diet, and plenty of exercise. So there you have it, the humongous fungus.
And the hunt begins through a microscope for a frequency which will shatter a living microorganism. Now we have a method of controlling Dr. Baer's device by an input control frequency. So if I put in, say, 100 hertz, out will come 100 pulses per second. If I put in 200 hertz, we'll get 200 pulses. So now we're searching for the magic frequency. And we start with 100 hertz, and we look through the microscope to see if anything's happening. We watch for 5 minutes. Nothing happens. So we try 101 hertz. We look through the scope for 5 minutes, and nothing happens. So we try 102, 103, and so on. Over the course of 15 months, we try hundreds and hundreds of frequencies, if not thousands, until we find the magic combination. The answer is you have to have 2 input frequencies, one low, one high, and the higher frequency must be 11 times the lower. It's what we musicians would call the 11th harmonic. And when we add the 11th harmonic, we begin to shatter microorganisms like a crystal glass. These are the first videos taken. We showed these videos to our friends in the biology department. They said they hadn't seen anything quite like it. Seems to be a new phenomenon. These organisms are being shattered by our electronic signals. This is a harmless organism, almost friendly, a little blepharisma. And normally they're very fast swimmers, but when you approach a frequency to which they are vulnerable, they begin to slow down, then they stop, and then they begin to disintegrate within about 3 minutes. So now we know we can destroy a microorganism, and the question comes up, but can you target a specific organism with a specific frequency? So in this next video, you'll see a large organism in the center, a paramecium, undergoing disintegration, and swimming all around it, a tiny different organism, which is unharmed. If we're lucky, we'll also hear the audio as I narrate the experiment live in a noisy lab. Perhaps you can see this sort of fireworks effect happening in the growing blister to the right of the organism. And here comes a little neighbor, wondering what's going on, who's testing. And you can see blisters forming now on the lower left quadrant and upper left quadrant. The shape is now changing. And a major explosion out the top. So now we have some evidence that we can target specific microorganisms with specific frequencies. And we make several more videos, and we film the destruction of hundreds of microorganisms. And about this time, we meet a cancer researcher, and we show them these videos. And this results in an invitation to spend 4 months in a cancer research lab trying to shatter cancer cells. This is our setup in the lab. You can see the microscope with cancer cells on it. Here's the plasma tube, and here is my little frequency control box. So first we attack pancreatic cancer. Take a good look at this slide, because the next one will look quite different. After we treat these cells, they change their shape and size, and they begin to grow long, rope-like structures out the sides. They look something like antennas. I call them bioantennas, for biological antennas. It's as if the cancer cells are trying to tune in to our signal. It also turns out this is the beginning of a process of destruction for cancer cells. We now know that cancer is vulnerable between the frequencies of 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz. So now we attack leukemia cells. Leukemia cell number 1 tries to grow a copy of itself, but the new cell is shattered into dozens of fragments and scattered across the slide. Leukemia cell number 2 then hyperinflates and also dies. Leukemia cell number 3 then tries to make another cancer cell. The new cell is shattered and the original cell dies.
So how did you come across sodium bicarbonate or baking soda as a treatment for cancer?
I was young. I was maybe, I had the diploma. And I followed many alternative carers, not doctors, and I figured out that the psoriasis was a fungus. I treated with iodine tincture with success. In a moment of desperation, I thought I made the good syllogism. So, psoriasis was said incurable, unknown illness, but I know it was a fungal infection. I could cure it. I say maybe another incurable, unknown illness, cancer, is a fungus. That was the syllogism, because I was desperate because people were dying. I couldn't accept it. So I could reach the fungal etiology on cancer from the psoriasis.
Okay.
And not by wait a minute. You can cure psoriasis with iodine tincture, but I thought, how can I cure the tumor, fungal infection when it is inside? It is impossible with the iodine tincture. But I thought, in the oncologic pediatric wards where I worked, I took the diploma in the university. We could eliminate the fungal infection, for instance, the trash of the baby, with sodium bicarbonate. At that moment, I tried to give sodium bicarbonate intravenously. And one of the first patients, a guy, child, 11 years old, was in coma. He was in coma, and 15 days in coma. He went to the university from the south of Italy, and the mother of this guy told me, I would give everything to speak with, if I can speak with him, even if I know that he has to die. At that moment, I prescribed in the university sodium bicarbonate intravenously, double dosage, and after 7 hours when I came back, the young boy was speaking with her mother. In one day, in 7 hours, sodium bicarbonate cut off partially, definitely, I don't know, but just cut off the fungal colonies, and the guy woke up.
Alright folks, there's been some controversy about colloidal silver, and we're going to do a little experiment here. I went out to the garage and I forgot a cup of coffee out there. It's about a week old and yucky. Let me get this. It's moldy. And I know a lot of you, as myself, are allergic to mold and fungus, and I've heard that colloidal silver can kill mold, and if it can kill mold, then you can imagine what it could do for us if we do an inhaler with it, with colloidal silver through a nebulizer, or just even drink it, because a lot of people have candida, which is a condition of mold also, and fungus. So let's give this an experiment. I'm going to go ahead, and that is not wine. I made some colloidal silver. And I'm just going to pour a little, couple of drops in there. And let's let that sit for a day or so and see what happens. We'll come back tomorrow. Alrighty folks, it's been a day and a half, and here's our cup of coffee that was all yucky, moldy, and if you can see, it's got one little speck, two little specks. So I'm going to complete this experiment and say that it has been a success. Now, I'm not going to drink that coffee, but so just imagine it just killed all that mold. I don't think that there's any question that colloidal silver can kill mold.
Dr. Bishop, can you tell us what we're dealing with here?
Clearly not. A garden variety, cordyceps fungi. A genetic mutation with the capacity of hyperaccelerated growth and nutrition absorption, which explains the rapid decomposition of the bodies.
Walter, what's cordyceps fungi?
Species capable of releasing neurotoxins so as to paralyze a host, usually an insect, so that the fungi can feed and lay its spores.
So why aren't they attacking us?
These are not a pack of wolves, Agent Broyles. Size notwithstanding, they are still a lower life form with rudimentary instincts probably based on tactile response. As long as none of you touch them, they won't even know you're there.
A couple of these bad boys are making their way down the sink.
Most likely seeking more water and nutrients, which shows a strong impulse to expand their reach as far as possible. I mean, really, this is a most extraordinary species, don't you think?
Admiration aside, Dr. Bishop, how do you recommend killing these things?
As with a great many molds and fungi, a strong dose of UV light or intense heat should effectively eradicate them.
By people globally, the sun flickering and blinking. It's been likened to the flickering of a light bulb just before it burns out.
And the sun is blinking all over the world. All over the world. See, this is what happens when you do experiments that you had no business doing. They messing with our sun. They messing with the time. And look at it. The sun is blinking all around the world. It's not just in one place. It's everywhere. It's happening everywhere.
All over.
You know, I'm doing a voiceover, but
and then
this is ridiculous.
Oh, look at you blinking.
The sun is blinking.
The thing blinks.
Why is our sun blinking? It's like a light bulb that's about to go out. And so, I know a lot of people say that they remember the sun being yellow, and you see it's turning yellow from white, blinking, blinking. Come on now. So they messing with things they have no business messing with. And this is if this is not the most important thing in human history, what is? Because the sun gives us electricity. And if it's going out, that means they had these tests with blackouts because they know that something about to happen where we're not going to be able to have no sun. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. I mean, all over the world. You know, and so how can they keep disputing there's something going on when it's happening everywhere? Look at this. I mean, it just go almost dark and then right back up. And it ain't, you know, nobody talking about this, but they talking about Trump and nuclear weapons and and terrorist attacks just to keep our mind off of what's really going on. And so this is the most important thing in human history. And so, you know, let me know what y'all thinking, man. It's all around the globe. Not just in one place. This is not just in one spot. This is everywhere. I mean, the sun is blinking. There's no clouds going in front of it. Something is affecting our sun. No wonder why they've been chemtrailing, trying to make it gloomy so that we don't spot it or we don't see it. But yeah, this is happening everywhere on the globe.